Now that we have confirmed the order was processed and the store is working, let's go over a final checklist really quick. Here's a final checklist of 30 items I created and is available for download. Feel free to utilize this for your store. Let's briefly go over each one. The first one you'll see is make sure all your text paragraphs and products are free from spelling errors. It's important to go over all of your descriptions, titles, and text to make sure they're free from errors and spelling errors especially. Logo, favicon, header, menus are placed and functional. Ensure that your logo looks sharp and inviting. Make sure it represents your brand well. Check to see if your favicon is visible near your web address bar and tabs. Look at your header and see if it's aligned properly. Also, test your menus and make sure they work and direct to the appropriate page. Content on site has been placed consistently. It is important that your content flows with your site and is consistent with the theme and the message of your products and company. Page and content formatting has been tested. Look over your pages and content. Make sure it's formatted correctly with all the right alignment and paragraph spacing. Page titles and products are descriptive and SEO friendly. Look over your page titles and product descriptions. Make sure they are descriptive and SEO friendly. This is so the search engines can pick them up and they display properly within the search engines. The products page layout is correct. Check every one of your products. Make sure the content is laid out correctly and clean. Find that just right feel between content and photos. You also don't want to overwhelm your customers with too much information. Product pricing, availability, and inventory updated. Check over your product prices. Make sure they are all correct. Also, ensure that you have your products in stock or that your products are available for back order. It's important to inform the customer about back orders or out of stock messages. You can also correct an email and notify them if you want them to wait. Product categories, tags, attributes are accurate. Ensure that your products correlate with the appropriate category. It's important that they have tags which will show up in your website's search. Check to see if the attributes are working correctly. This includes the checkout procedure. Images have appropriate size, descriptions, and text. Go over all of your images. Make sure they are consistent. When they are enlarged, ensure that they are not pixelated or distorted. Add content such as titles and descriptions to your photos and pictures. This allows search engines to pick up your product photos. Also, make sure to add a watermark if you are worried about copyright infringements from other companies or competitors. HTML and CSS past validation. There are validation tools out there to ensure that there's no errors in your HTML or CSS. The HTML validator can be found at http://validator.w3.org. The CSS validator can be found at jigsaw.w3.org/CSS-validator. There are no broken links. Ensure that there are no broken links on your site. There are plugins available to check this automatically and email you if there are any broken links on your site. One of the plugins is called Broken Link Checker, and you can download it in the WordPress Marketplace. 301 redirects inserted. This is if you have a previous website and are moving your website to WordPress. Keep in mind that your existing links are stored in the search engines. You'll want to go ahead and update those links and notify Google that your links have changed. 404 page exists and is informative. In rare cases, your customers will come across a 404 page. Don't worry or panic about this. You can inform your customers or guests to direct back to the page they were previously on. Contact Us page and other forms are functional and forward to the correct email address. Do a test run on your Contact Us page. Make sure you also collect the necessary information from your customers when they are contacting you. You can use different routing programs to route to different emails, such as, let's say if a customer has a support question, well, you can direct them to a support email, or if they have a sales question, you can direct them to the sales email. displays and functions correctly in Internet Explorer 6, 7, 8, Mac, PC, Safari, Firefox, and Chrome. It's important to test your website on all of the different browsers. Although IE6 and IE7 are slowly becoming out of date, it is still important to ensure that your website does work with these. There are tools you can use to check the functionality of the different browsers and the capability of your website. Test it at 1024 by 768 or larger resolutions. It's becoming more and more common that people are upgrading their monitors. 1080p is becoming the standard for monitor resolution and screen resolution for customers and people who are browsing. Test it on mobile platforms Android and iOS. I showed you in an earlier video how to test your website simply by resizing the browser to the correlated phone resolution size. You can do that for your website in the same fashion. Test it on tablet platforms Android and iOS. Similar to the one above, you want to go ahead and test it on different platforms. Ensure that if they are using an iPad, that they can allow to view your website in portrait and standard mode. WooCommerce settings are all accurate and correct. Ensure that every setting in your backend is correct and accurate, along with the email addresses. This is highly important, especially when communicating with your customers. Taxes are calculated and working properly. If you do have a tax structure, I ensure you test these before you launch your store to avoid any confusion or any mishap if you're taxing someone who doesn't need to be taxed on their order. Payment gateways are working and secure. Ensure that your payment gateway is processing the transaction correctly and you're receiving all the correct details on the back end. Secure certificate if required. Remember, if you're processing payments on your website, you'll want to ensure that you have an SSL certificate installed and working properly. Customer order information processes correctly and accurately. Following the previous video, we ran a test transaction. We also saw that all of the correct data did come through. Please make sure to do this, especially before launching your store. Footer includes copyright and year. The biggest turnoff to any customer is looking at the bottom copyright bar and seeing that that's outdated a couple years ago. This is a big red flag right off the bat. Ensure that it is always updated and represents your store. Is your website backed up? There are plenty of different backup options now. I utilize a full server backup every week. I encourage you to do the same. There are plugins available too. You can also utilize Dropbox in the fashion to back up your website. Is your website monitored? Earlier I went over different ways to add security plugins to your website. One way that I highly recommend is installing a type of security plugin that monitors brute force attacks and other spamming attempts for your website. XML sitemaps, HTML sitemaps are available. This is important for Google to fetch your site and allow the crawlers to be able to document every page, descriptions, and titles of your products, your blog posts, and anything else of your site. This translates back to Google and then displays in their format throughout the search engines. Have you successfully purchased a product from your store? This is one of the last items that people overlook the most. Take 5 minutes out of your day and make sure the transaction processes successfully. Once you've completed these tasks, you should be ready to go live and start marketing. Remember, your store is always an ongoing task. There's no such thing as once your site is built, it's finished. You will always be tweaking your website and adding content. This is always an ongoing task. The more time you put into your site, the more it grows. Good luck. For more e-commerce resources, including guides, tutorials, and walkthroughs, visit actionecommerce.com. That's actionecommerce.com.